Hey everyone, Miss Rose here. Today I'm going to be reading you the book daVinci, The Secret of the Mona Lisa by Rosie Smith and Bruce Whatley. daVinci always said he was born with a pencil in his hand. His mom thought it felt like a broom. From the moment Danny was born, he drew pictures, everywhere, of all kinds of things. Not only with his right hand, but with his left hand too. When his baby sister Lisa was born, he drew her. Actually, he drew on her more than he drew pictures of her. Danny's best friend, Mick Angelo, lived next door. And if Danny was born with a pencil in his hand, then Mick was born with a hammer and chisel in his. Mick loved to carve. He carved anything he could lay his hands on. Danny also had a dog called Picasso. Lisa thought it was a funny name for a dog. But then Picasso was a very funny-looking dog. Danny and Mick spent most of each day creating beautiful things. Mick was nearly as good at drawing as Danny. They drew landscapes of rolling fields and rocky mountains. They drew plants and animals. They sketched new ideas and inventions. They drew buildings large and small. And sometimes they designed their own. But their favorite thing to draw was people. Old people, young people, all kinds of people. And hands. Hands were always a challenge. The Duke of Milan liked to be surrounded by beautiful things. He had built himself a huge museum called the Grand Ludwig Museum of Art. A big marble statue of the Duke stood at the entrance. He had sacked artist after artist until they captured his features just right. The Duke of Milan thought it a striking resemblance. Every year, the Duke of Milan held an exhibition. Artists from all over Italy would send their finest works for display. Paintings from the north, sculptures from the south, artworks from the east and west. Portrait paintings were always an important part of the exhibition. Artists painted the rich and famous, and sometimes the not so rich and famous. This year, the Duke of Milan commissioned Danny's uncle Leo to paint his portrait. "I expect you to capture my strong chin," said the Duke during his first sitting. "If I can find it, I'll capture it," muttered Uncle Leo. Then he said aloud, "Let's find your good side." He tried the left profile, then the right. Front on was just too scary. Uncle Leo preferred the back view. This wasn't going to be easy. Danny and Mick decided they would do something for the exhibition too. It would have to be something very special. But all the special people were already being painted by other artists. "Paint me," said Lisa. "You?" asked Danny. "Well, it's either me or the dog," said Lisa. "No one else is free." They all looked at the dog. Very strange dog. Danny thought about using Picasso. No, they'd have to use Lisa. "Okay," said Danny, "but we've got to make it really special." Mick started sketching ideas. Maybe he would do a sculpture of Lisa instead of a painting. After all, that's what he loved to do the most. It could be a practice run for a couple of really big sculptures he planned to carve one day. But first, they had to prepare Lisa for her portrait. Mick and Danny decided they needed to dress Lisa up to make her look rich and famous. But Lisa wasn't rich or famous. "It would be so much easier if you were the most famous woman in the world," said Danny. She could be a warrior, suggested Mick. Danny thought this was a really good idea, and the boys set about transforming Lisa into a warrior princess. Picasso helped in his own little way. He hated horses. I feel stupid, said Lisa. She actually didn't look like a warrior either. I'm not sure this is working, admitted Danny. Something more classical, maybe, suggested Mick. Yes, Greek or Roman, said Danny. Arf, barked Picasso, who thought he heard the words pizza and spaghetti. He was hungry. Not that anybody understood. Nobody understood Picasso at all, really. Can you stand any taller? Asked Danny. This is not the classical look I'm thinking of. Danny and Mick sketched the folded material anyway, hoping it might be useful later. I think we need to do a beautiful portrait, said Danny. A classic beauty, said Mick. A classic mistake, said Lisa. Maybe with longer hair, said Danny. Curly hair, said Mick. Hair in a bun? Arf, arf, barked Picasso. Hair? Rabbits? Cream buns? He didn't care. He was still hungry. Danny and Mick continued to draw and paint and sculpt. They tried this idea and that. The left profile, the right profile, the three-quarter profile, sitting, standing, standing behind a chair, standing on a chair. They tried using some of their early drawings as inspiration. Even some of their inventions. Lisa was starting to wish she hadn't suggested posing for them at all. Why can't you just paint me? Cried Lisa. Me, just as I am. Oh, you're a real moaner, Lisa, said Danny. It was the night of the exhibition's grand opening. The best artists from all over the country came to show their work. There were amazing paintings of mountains and rivers, historical legends and myths, and then there were the portraits. The Duke of Milan led the crowd through the main gallery, where the portraits were hung, where his portrait was hung. Uncle Leo had given up trying to paint a portrait of the Duke as nothing pleased him. So another artist had painted a rather large, flattering portrait of the Duke of Milan. Who's that? Someone asked. It's me, insisted the Duke. Who's that? Asked somebody louder from the other side of the gallery. Everyone gathered around to look at the painting of a young girl with a very curious, enchanting smile. It's extraordinary, said Uncle Leo. Who painted such a beautiful portrait? Danny, shouted Mick. Danny blushed a little. It's Lisa. Lisa blushed a lot. But the smile, said Uncle Leo. How did you get her to smile like that? It's so mysterious, but compelling. I positioned her on a stool by the window, set up my easel and paints, and when I looked up, there it was, the smile. Incredible, cried Uncle Leo. Not really, said Lisa, and she smiled. Lisa's Leonardo facts. These are just a bunch of facts about Leonardo da Vinci, his artwork, and his inventions. So I'm going to go ahead and read them to you. A genius ahead of his time, Leonardo da Vinci was born in Vinci, a small village halfway between Florence and Pisa in Italy. Considered to be one of the greatest painters of all time, he was also a sculptor, an inventor, and a scientist. Unfortunately, few of his artworks have survived, partly due to many of his processes being so experimental. His notebooks, though, still exist and are full of sketches and notes on science, nature, and the theories of painting and sculpting. Leonardo was able to draw and paint more accurately than any artist at the time. Leonardo da Vinci began work on the Mona Lisa in around 1503. Also called La Gioconda, it is believed to be the portrait of Lisa Cardinani, the wife of a Florentine merchant, Francisco Giocondo. The painting is the earliest Italian portrait to focus on the sitter in a half-length way. It set the standard for all future portraits. Leonardo's use of fine shading in the detail of the hands and face made it stand out among the great paintings. His search for perfection meant the Mona Lisa was a constant work in progress for him. He never actually parted with the portrait. With her mysterious smile, the Mona Lisa became one of the most famous paintings in the world. It hangs in the Louvre Museum in Paris behind bulletproof glass and is seen by millions of people every year. Art of every kind was produced at the 1470s workshop in Florence, where Leonardo was trained, along with massive engineering projects. He was fascinated by the natural world, studying nature, mechanics, anatomy, physics, and much more. Leonardo was also fascinated by the notion of flying. He studied wind currents and the problems relating to the center of gravity. He designed machines with parachute-like sails, gliders made of reeds, and silk helicopter-like machines, flying machines that looked like canoes with wings, and machines based on butterflies, dragonflies, and bats. He used a multitude of mechanical devices, including pulleys, cranks, toothed wheels, transmission systems, and shock absorbers. Despite all of this work, Leonardo was never successful in creating a working flying machine. The Sforza movement. Though he was renowned as a sculptor, there are no existing sculptures that can be definitively attributed to Leonardo da Vinci, but his notebooks contain the extraordinary planning of monumental projects. In the 1480s, Ludovico Sforza, the Duke of Milan, commissioned Leonardo to cast a huge bronze statue of a man on a horse. The Sforza monument was to be twice the size of any other equestrian statue of the time. Leonardo drew many sketches of it and made small models in clay and wax before eventually creating a full-size clay version for casting. Unfortunately, in 1494, the French invaded Italy. The bronze put aside for the project, at least 66 tons, was used to make cannons before Leonardo got a chance to cast it. He never completed the sculpture. And that's everything. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing this story and learning a little bit more about Leonardo da Vinci. Maybe you can see why he's one of my favorite artists and inventors.